another video, and this time I got a Mercedes GLE 450D for my top class. And after slating the A class last time, let's see if this car is any better. Hey guys, welcome back to another special video. And to be honest with you, I'm in a special car. I didn't think I was gonna get this car, but thank you Mercedes-Benz. They've kindly lended me this car just for the weekend. And I thought, what a better time to review, because I reviewed the Mercedes A class, and I actually got someone that told me I went a little bit too hard on the A class, because they kind of said, you know, for the price you're paying, I don't think there's anything better than that, which is kind of true and not true at the same time. I do think, you know, I called it what did I say about the car? Some overrated junk or something like that, which is a bit harsh, because if you look at other other class of car around that kind of bracket, the 1 Series I think is horrid. The new one is horrid. The A3 depends on which specific A3 you're looking at. So maybe I was, but it doesn't stay away from what I said personally. But anyways, that's the A class Garaba. It's already out there, and look, maybe I might revisit that car again, and we'll see. But I'm here with the GLE 450D, specifically the facelift. So this car came out in 2019, I believe, and it got recently revised. It's 3 years ago now. It got revised to now the newer model, so they changed a bit of stuff. I'll kind of go over that, but I'm here with the 450D, and this is the diesel variant, and I believe, from on top of my memory, this is the top end of the engine models in terms of anything that you can get that's not AMG Performance. Obviously, if you get AMG Performance, I believe it starts with the 53, the 53S, and then you get the 63 and the 63S, I think that's how the MG, so you got like 2 or 3 MG model and Performance flip AMG Performance variants, but this is like an equivalent for TI for Mercedes. So it's the top of the range engine model, and I think, even from what I've read online, I actually do agree that this is the top of the bunch if you do have the budget for it, because I do believe that it's very punchy. It's a bit noisy, a little bit, not as bad as the A class, and we'll get on to the dynamics of the driving and stuff like that, but it's not as noisy as that. It's a really good engine. It's very responsive, and the gearbox is sharp. It's sharp as it can ever be on a car of this kind of magnitude. So the 450D, if you do have the budget for it, it's a fantastic car, fantastic engine, and that's the top end. And it's kind of a shame, because I've always said this about Mercedes, that their cars are only good the further up the range you go. I think the lower end Mercedes models are not good. The A to the C and everything else in between those kind of ranges, I think there's a much better value cars in other markets. But let's talk specifically this car. So I'll flip the camera over and I'll show you what I'm seeing and what I think of it. So this is what the interior looks like. So it's pretty similar to, funnily enough, what you get in the A class, in terms of that dual screen. For some reason, I actually think this one is slightly larger. Don't quote me on that, but my eyes are not deceiving, man. I'm gonna have to do some research after, but this does look slightly larger than the one you get in the A class, but the same philosophy and the same design language kind of crosses over. And I kind of said it in the previous review that, you know, that interior design that was first kind of brought into the A class has essentially been repurposed and remarketed to now going across the entire Mercedes lineup. Even the G-Wagon has something of this similar design. So yeah, Mercedes have done a number on on that design, infotainment and all the other things. It is pretty much the same thing, same system, same everything, really good. The actual better thing in this car that you don't get in the lower end, you don't anymore, even in the facelift ones, they kept it in this, is this the touchpad. I'm not a fan of it in a sense compared to like the rotary dials you get in like the Beamers, but this is definitely not shabby at all. I think this is a lot better than having everything buried behind that screen. And I've said it in so many reviews, even with the BMWs and other cars. I'm not a big fan of burying everything on that touchscreen and kind of forcing the consumer to use the touchscreen. I do believe in having that kind of balance with the controls, and it makes the car more UI friendly. So you got obviously the rotary dial here, and if we turn the car on, yeah, I think it is bigger than the. Oh, I think it is bigger than the screen you get in the A class. But anyways, as I was saying, I think if you ever do own the car, you can have that as your access. You have obviously the rotary dial here. So if you go on the home, you can see that, and you just use this to essentially navigate, and it's a lot easier when you're driving as well. So I think it's definitely better. And also you got the dynamic button here, so when you're driving you can switch between different modes, which is really good. In some cars it's buried under the touchscreen, so it's not the best. And you got some some quick shortcut buttons here, which is really, really good. And I said it about the infotainment system on the previous A class, and the same thing could be said here. The infotainment system in these Mercedes is beyond exceptional. I think now manufacturers are developing systems within their sat navs that are just as good as the Apple CarPlay. And to be honest with you, you don't actually need the Apple CarPlay. You can get away with using a sat nav, inbuilt sat nav, and it's just as good, if not even better than the ones, because it's been integrated well into the system. But anyways, we'll get into the build quality in a second. The steering wheel here, not a big fan of these buttons here. I didn't actually think, I forgot to mention in the A class, because it's essentially the same thing here. These are haptic touch kind of thing. So when I'm driving, there's times when my hand has accidentally just, you see, like it's accidentally just like slipped under and it's changed the music or done something to the thing, which I don't really want to do. But yeah, I guess you can get used to it. It's not completely touchscreen, but they're haptic, so you have to kind of, yeah, like you don't have to press it. You can if you want, but yeah, your hand can just easily just swipe and you're doing something completely different. But it's got the Burmester sound system. Here's actually a hot take. I think the Burmester sound system in the A class that I reviewed sounded a lot better than this. This is not terrible, and I think it's standard across the entire range. It's just, I don't think it's got enough depth as the ones you get in the A class. This one is just good in terms of the bass, but the Harman Kardon you get in the Volvos and even the Beamers is a lot better than this. So yeah, that's just a food for thought. What else before I get into so obviously you got the little buttons here, the shortcut buttons. Love that. In terms of now the build quality, now it's not the A class in terms of the build quality, and I think the A class is beyond a joke. I think this is better, but I don't think it's great. One thing I actually did say, that the bezels here are, yeah, you see these bits of black, just, yeah. Anyways, the build quality here, it's a lot better. You can definitely tell that you're in the top of the range Mercedes in terms of the build quality, but it's not out of this world quality. Like, there's a bit of rattly and it feels cheap. This bit of, like, yeah, this bit of plastic here feels a bit crap, but as you go towards the top, it does feel better. Yeah, you see here. Yeah, I don't want to break the thing, but yeah, it's not the worst. This bit of metal here does actually feel quite tactile. Does this have cord? Yeah, it does have cord and heated cup holders. Obviously the gloss black does scratch. This is just a material thing, not a Mercedes thing. Any car that has gloss black, over a period of time, it will pick up scratches, natural scratches. So yeah, it's just a choice of material that I've decided to use. I do like these little handles there. They do feel very strong and rigid. You got some lot of cup holders here. The seats are really good. I like the the suede with the leather. I think it gives a good blend of comfort, and also when you put in the heated seats on, they're very good. You do get the other controls here as well, which is really good, and some nice buttons there. So the overall build quality, obviously scratchy plastic towards the bottom, but in terms of the overall build quality, it's not the worst, but it's not like BMW level or even Porsche, and we'll get to that car in a second. But yeah, we'll talk about the back space as well, but it's not the worst, and I don't think it's the best. It's somewhere in the middle. Yeah, it's somewhere in the middle. So in terms of the engines, we'll go into the engines. So obviously, the model actually had to get list because the model is quite it's quite extensive. So obviously, you have the hybrid and diesel models. This one specifically is, I think, it's the top end diesel, the 450D. I don't think you can get anything better than this unless you're going AMG. So I'm just moving the steering wheel. Unless you go for the AMG performance models, but in terms of the actual everyday models, this is as good as it gets. You do have it in two body styles. You can get it as a coupe or as a standard. This is the standard one, and I do prefer this over the coupe. I think coupe SUVs have never really made any sense to me, and I'll never really understand why they exist. The epoxy design of this does look a lot better in my opinion, but again, that's just a personal choice for a lot of people. In terms of, yeah, so the diesel starts at 350D and it goes all the way up to 450D, which is the one we have here. There's actually, funny thing is, there's actually not a lot of options even on this top end. You don't get a sunroof. I think that's an optional extra, even on the top of the range model that you have here. There's no heads-up display in this car. You do have heated and cooled cup holders. You do have air suspension in this car as standard. So regardless whether you go for the top of the range or the lower end, you do have air suspension as a standard thing. Obviously the price of these cars start around 78 to about 92,000, so it's at the top end of the model lineup, and at this kind of price range you're almost entering Porsche level. Not almost, you are entering Porsche level, not top end Porsches, but a Cayenne, like a mid to low end engine level of a Cayenne. And at that point, Porsche Cayenne or this, yeah, especially if you go the used market, then the price discrepancy can get a lot more interesting. But yeah, actually, yeah, so the model version is the 400E, 300D and the 450D. They're all 4MATIC Plus, which is essentially their version of an all-wheel drive system. And obviously it is a bit pricey on that end, especially if you buy a brand new car. I'll always say go shop approved used. You definitely get a lot better buck for your money in terms of that. I think the system has just come on again, but yeah, in terms of that, you obviously start to get interested in terms of the level of prices you're paying for this. I'm not going to go into the benefit in kind tax, but yeah, this is a pretty solid car for the price, I guess. Equivalent is obviously the X5, the Audi Q7, and I believe the Porsche Cayenne as well. which is around similar. If you're not go a bit rogue, obviously the Range Rover Sport is also an option there. And obviously if you start to go a bit more premium, then obviously then you start to look at things like the Urus and the Q8 as well, as a potential alternative. But I'll get on the road and I'll tell you how this car is to drive on the motorway and around town as well. And I think it's actually really, really good. That's one thing I would say. It is not shabby at all. So this is the car from the outside. Obviously you can see it carries a lot of AMG and AMG line DNA from it, so you get a lot of AMG styling. From the standard version, you get the chrome detailing on the top half of the car, from here all the way to around the side skirts. But this is obviously the MG line with some of the black stuff. When obviously we come to the the headroom here, this is it's decent. I'm about 6'1", 6 foot. The legroom is a bit tight. I'll scooch over to the other side because this other side is oh sorry oh god this other side is set to my driving position, and legroom nice, headroom is pretty okay. The only thing is obviously the under thigh support is a bit you should be fine. Well, for someone my height, it's set to my driving position. This is where I would be sitting, and if you take this is fine. I'll be comfortable riding in this car for a very long distance. In terms of boot space, to be fair, I haven't actually thought about how I'm gonna show you guys the boot space, but about 630. The seats can be folded. The other thing is as well, it's obviously got the automatic tailgate as well to come with it, so it's a very practical car. And for something like this, obviously the X5, I've sat in the X5 and I would say it's about the same in terms of the headroom, and in terms of obviously the other stuff with it as well. The only thing is it hasn't got the side skirts, so you can't step into it. But really a V6 diesel, I think, puts about 200 to 300 odd brake on this, so it's a pretty good car. And I think it's very stylish. It's not the full AMG performance version of this car, but it's got a lot of styling cues that you get in a lot of the AMG lines. You also got the upgraded wheels as well, and it's a pretty good looking car. Right, so how is the GLE 450D like to drive? Obviously we'll start off by stating the obvious. It is a 3-litre 6-cylinder diesel, so in terms of punch, this isn't anything comparable to the 2-litre options that you have towards the lower end of the GLE. So this is, like I mentioned in the previous segment, it is the top end versions of the non-AMG performance cars. So if you do want an engine like this, you will be paying top dollar for it. But how is it like to drive on just normal town? It's fine. It's a little bit loud. I think that's just a standard thing with diesels. They tend to rattle a little bit, but once it's in gear and it's moving, it's very, very good, very smooth, very economical as well. I think I was averaging about 35 to 36 miles per gallon, which is really good for considering it's a 3-litre diesel. That's a really good return. And in terms of its actual performance, straight line performance, very, very strong as well. I'm not sure, I can't actually remember the figures on top of my head, but when I just plant my foot, it just goes. It's sharp and very razor to the foot as well. And that's kind of what you want in essentially what is a cruiser really. It's not a Beamer in the sense that with like an X5, the suspension's a lot more firmer and the steering wheel has a little bit of weight to it. This, on the other hand, I've got this on Sport, and when I put it on Sport Individual, there is that little bit of weight to the steering wheel, so it does feel a lot more responsive. But if I just put it here, you see it, and then if I get it towards performance, you can see, ooh, guys, I'll be honest, it's who says diesels are dead? The only thing, if I'm being very, very picky, the only thing is when it picks up speed and it's almost launching itself, the suspension does wiggle a little bit. It's riding on air suspension. I don't think it's running on adaptive suspension. I think it's on air. And I actually think it's not the worst suspension in the world. And also being a 4MATIC Plus, the grip on this thing is phenomenal. Like, honestly, you're driving this car and you're like, wow, this is something else. The suspension is really good. It's very comfortable over long motorway distance as well. So you won't be needing to feel like you need a bit more power. And I think this, for a lot of people, is the perfect blend. It's got that extra bit of performance that you expect from a car of this kind of price tag. And when you start to push it down, its speeds, it does pick up very well. You obviously can't put it on manual mode. I don't know why you would, to be honest with you. This is a GLE. Like, this ain't a SL63 or something like that. This is meant to be a cruiser, and it does that really well. It's not that sporty drive you expect from like a Beamer or like a 63, for example, or a 53. It's essentially what you'd expect a diesel to be. Very economical and very punchy when you need it to be. The engine is not as rattly as the one I had in the A class, and to be honest with you, I shouldn't really be comparing that. But when you're looking at Mercedes towards the upper end, it does ride really well. But yeah, even if when I put it onto, for example, the eco mode, that's when obviously the engine changes up a little bit. The suspension is a bit more firm, not firmer, sorry, a bit more loose, and it's not as sharp as it is. But even on eco mode, it's not the worst. It's not the worst engine out there, to be honest, because it's still very punchy even on eco. But I'll be honest, you just whack it into comfort, and that's all you need. You got the Sport Plus and the individual. I think the person that configured this, obviously you can with individual Mercedes, you can kind of tweak it a little bit in terms of the throttle response, and you can firm up the steering wheel a little bit, which I done, and it's not as firm as I want it to be, unfortunately, but it's firm enough that it does feel engaging when you're driving. I did have a try with the Tesla Model S, I think, Performance. I wasn't really a key fan of that car, and the review of that will come soon. But this, yeah, it's a cruiser. It's not a performance car by any stretch of the imagination, even though it does have that performance element to it. I just think it's not firm enough for me for it to be a performance car. I just think it's just a cruiser. It cruises really well. The engine is soft. The gearbox is sharp enough. It's not instant power, but the delay isn't too drastic. The only other thing is obviously the build quality, with Mercedes, it's always hit or miss. I actually think this is the better end of it. I know there's been, a lot of complaints about the quality in a lot of Mercs, but I think this is probably one of the best ones they've got. And yeah, it's got everything you need. You can actually lower the suspension here and heighten it when you're going over bumps. And for most people, you never don't need to ever go on that thing. But if you ever do, you can. The option is there for your liking. The other things are, you don't get things like rear wheel steering on a car of this price tag. I know, crazy, right? And obviously when you're thinking about like moving around tight corners, that can obviously be a thing where it might be a little bit tricky, especially when you're doing like 3-point turns. without that rear wheel steering on a car this big, maneuvering can be quite difficult. Apart from that, it's a very, very comfortable car. You sit very high up as well, and you see a lot of the road, which is expected on a car of this kind of price tag. The X5, I haven't driven the newer X5s, but from my assumption of BMW's driving DNA, I think it will be a lot more different to what you have in here. I expect the ride to be firm, suspension, the steering wheel to have a little bit more feedback to it. This just feels a bit lighter on the touch, which is fine, to be honest, because again, this car will spend a lot of its time on the motorway, and you know, that's why you buy a diesel, and it's very punchy as well. So yeah, would I recommend this? Absolutely. I think it's a very, very good car for what you're paying as well. 80 odd grand. Obviously there is people mentioning the Porsches, but I think it's a little bit unfair to compare this to a Porsche, because one, the price tag of a Porsche is still very high, and two, the actual driving dynamics of a Cayenne is nowhere near what you get in this. This is more comparable to like a Q7, like I said before, and the X5, and I think, you know, you'd be happy with either option, because even me, like, I actually think this is a very good car for what it is. The diesel is very punchy and very economical as well, which is what you want a diesel to be. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next review.